What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the MTV Unplugged EP by Katy Perry. Basically this project is called MTV Unplugged Katy Perry and it came out in the fall of 2009. So Katy Perry had a particularly large 2008 with her hit album One of the Boys, which I reviewed back in October as far as this pitch going to happen. But MTV Unplugged was kind of back on the come up after a good while. Apparently according to Wikipedia they had more than 100 specials of these, which I didn't realize it was that many within the pitch. I do remember a couple of these notable ones, like the MTV Unplugged Nirvana and Alice in Chains ones. Korn had a pretty decent one. There were some notable ones in there, like Alicia Keys did one in particular as far as this pitch can happen. But just within the appeal, not every musician will kind of do these, but depending upon how they were nailed, there definitely were some ones in there, like definitely I think one of the most notable ones happens to be, the Nirvana one within those pitches. Really happened to really bolster them and probably would have taken them a lot further had that band lasted longer within the pitch, as to the unfortunateness of what happened within the appeal. But this is an interesting aspect here because Katy Perry handles this particular reserve differently within the fair. It's a simmering type project, but it just puts a new spin on some of her hit songs. It's an interesting pitch to kind of get within that tone, just because you wouldn't know what to really do with like a dance club kind of primer for EDM, like I Kissed a Girl or one of those type of ones, or even Waking Up in Vegas, some of those type of appeals. Hot and Cold is not on this particular product, but I would have questioned what that would have been like in an acoustic format, because that's the thing about MTV Unplugged for folks that don't know, so it just puts like acoustic licks on some of these type of ones and brings like some new spins. Usually artists will do like cover songs, some of those type pitches, and original songs that kind of work for the fold pretty well in terms of acoustics. Some excellent type of appeal to kind of get that, but the taste behind this, the aspect, it is an interesting type of appeal as to how like I Kissed a Girl translated to acoustic within that appeal behind it. There are some good ones on here, but with Katy Perry doing like these makeshift type songs within the pitch, you do get some of that concept on here. It's not as much of like the usual kind of frosty kind of glaze and this kind of more aloofness that I've seen from some acoustic type products from the 90s and pitches like that, but it does have an appeal. This is going to get a pretty high score within the pitch behind it. I do like the appeal behind it, but it takes like that pep. But what really, with Katy Perry having similar aspects to like Rihanna and Kelly Clarkson, Avril Lavigne in certain senses, some of those type of folks that kind of did that particular makeshift kind of dredge. That's what happens more often on here. But there are some up-tempo type moments, but considering that Katy Perry only had one album out around this time when this came out in the fall of 2009, there's not a lot of content to kind of work with. So this happened pretty abruptly, quickly for her. Right after her first album, they decided to do an MTV Unplugged, which is some excellent type fare, but it's just unfortunate because there's not more songs within the pitch. Within the variety, if it had been longer, there would have been more to digest within the appeals, being able to see some more moments, because I think most folks realize that probably a continued hit song and one of her most notable, not that Katy Perry doesn't have further hits, but definitely the flair and the overall taste and flavor of I Kissed a Girl is pretty excellent aspect, and it's definitely like just an easy number one that continues to be. It is unfortunate that Hot and Cold did not make this particular product, but I do feel like the relative spark behind it, when you don't get acoustic numbers that are kind of more within the aspect, is just the fact that you're going to get some dredgy type ones on here within the aspect that those songs are already dredgy to begin with. So it's not a huge complaint, but it's just the kind of tone that it just deals with some of that 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock p.m. makeshift dredge within the pitch behind it, which was already on One of the Boys as far as those pitches going to happen. So it's just, with there only being 7 songs, you get the concept. If you are looking for something within the concept of getting like a glaze about it that just has like a particular something that can be kind of haunting within the pitch, or something that kind of has like that kind of aspect of something with like the kind of jolting type feel of like Alice in Chains Unplugged or some of those type pitches. It is just kind of an interesting context like I guess to describe this in terms of how I'd like to. It's just the pitch behind certain it just seems like some MTV Unplugs are going to be different within the pitch behind it, but just not being used to like the concept of not getting folks that have had more kind of drug problems or just in the pitch behind it. It's a different aspect to say, oh, Katy Perry, she's generally very sunny and kind of vanilla type personality, and tapioca within the pitch. Not to say tapioca in terms of quality, but just the fare behind it. It's interesting kind of get like what her spin on MTV Unplugged would kind of be, because when you associate it with like some of the 90s folks that kind of, just when you associate it with like folks like I want to say even Pearl Jam. I want to say even Pearl Jam might have done an MTV Unplugged. When you think of some of these grunge type folks, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, some of these type folks, this is a different taste of it. But we'll go ahead and get towards this so you know what I'm talking about here. So basically, yeah, there's 7 songs in this particular project, 5 of which are from Katy Perry's One of the Boys from 2008, which once again I reviewed back in October. Now I don't own that album as of this particular moment, so I don't remember as full blown. I remember waking up in Vegas and I Kissed a Girl and You're So Gay, some of those type ones, but from what I remember thinking of you, I remember that was like a classic kind of makeshift dredge of like 4 o'clock p.m. pitches like that. But I don't remember Lost as well as far as those pitches going to happen. But just to say, there is an original song here that is in the acoustic format and Brick by Brick, which is some good type of peels. And then Hack and Sack is from a Fountains of Wayne album, which I want to say was the one that had Stacy's mom on there as far as this pitch can happen. So it's a good type song. Helps me. It's a good type song just because like Fountains of Wayne was really known as like a one-hit wonder, so it brings some more light to folks to help them out with being able to find more hit songs from them normally off a one-hit wonder, and not necessarily one-trick pony, but just the aspect of just not having terribly many hits to their names. So it's a good type of appeal. Katy Perry has some good taste in music. So just the aspects of just looking after it. So out of these 7 songs in here, I wound up recommending 5. So only 2 songs I don't recommend would just be the middle of the project, which is just the 2 makeshift songs in terms like that relative dredge, which is just Thinking of You and Lost. So the thing about these particular 2 songs, I think these songs probably sounded about relatively similar to how they did on One of the Boys. They just seemed like kind of relative continuations of what that sound was kind of like on One of the Boys from 2008. This seems like simple kind of cash-ins, and that's what I was talking about as far as saying that Katy Perry just did not, it may have been low. This particular project may have been a little bit early just because of the concept that she just didn't have that many hits to her name, or not hits, she didn't have that many songs to her name. She really only had like a 10, 12, or 13 song album to her name as far as those pitches kind of happen, so it just was not that many hits to really choose. I mean, like I said, I do think Hot and Cold would have been a nice one on here, but then that would have been, selling the ship too short. That probably would have been selling the ship too short for her to just did all her singles on here. So it's just kind of within the pitch. I realized that there had to be at least one or something that didn't make the cut as far as those pitches kind of happen, but just within the aspect behind it, as a result, like if this had happened when she dropped like her Teenage Dream from 2010, which just came out like 6 months later, would have been like if this would have came out in like November of 2010 when the crest of like this particular stuff or from Teenage Dream was charting pretty heavily, I would have definitely said like a song like E.T. I think that came out on Teenage Dream. Some of those type ones, like the California song with Snoop Dogg, some of those type ones, I think that would have been a more, it just was a little bit, it just kind of jumped the gun a little bit, which is kind of the problem. I mean, this is still going to get a pretty high score. It was just within the pitch that it's just relatively somewhat almost chart with the hits on here, but both Thinking of You and Lost is just kind of within the concept as far as saying that both these songs are just like that typical kind of sunset stretching kind of just 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 p.m. drench just within the pitch behind it. These are just ones that get lost in like the makeshift during some of those type pitches that just like a long car ride home or just the relative evening traffic haze as far as those pitches can happen and just malaise about it just within the tones. I don't recommend those as much just because I don't know how commonly I'd listen to them. I do feel like Brick by Brick was kind of like that, but it just nailed it a little bit better with like the tone. I do like Katy Perry having like a new song just in the pitch that's just more suited towards it. This has a little bit more spark within the tone behind it. But so we'll go ahead and talk about some of these. So I will talk about Brick by Brick first as far as that particular affair kind of goes. Like I was saying, this is an original song, so I did like the fact that Katy Perry put some new ones on here. So Brick by Brick is like a dredgy kind of deep sunset gaze kind of get here. It's more sage and stony than like Think of You. I would definitely feel like here, but it's like some nice original haze to kind of get. So I realized that actually Thinking of You, Lost, and Brick by Brick are all that relative same conduct to like that particular appeal, but I just feel like there's a little bit more malaise about Brick by Brick that just has that particular type aspect about it that just makes it a little bit more connecting. Just kind of the tone. I mean, Thinking of You is just like that same conduct that just feels a little bit more work bound, but I just feel like there's a little bit more spark and just a little bit more electricity and Brick by Brick within the tone behind it. Just has a little bit more juice towards it as far as those particular appeals can happen. Just would have to say, so yeah, Brick by Brick is just a little bit more dissonant and sage as far as those pitches can happen compared to Thinking of You and Lost, where both those songs in the middle kind of feel like more of ones that just have more of like that makeshift kind of period, just in the sense this typical kind of Tuesday, Wednesday type fare, just a little bit of ponder in there, but just the aspect of this, the continuation of this getting to work, getting home, some of those type pitches. But Brick by Brick just has a little bit more electricity about it with good type tone for that, just nice sageness. And then some of these other ones on here, like Waking Up in Vegas is an obvious connection to one. Now this is one that kind of had some liveliness, but the translation on this particular song as a single from the 2008 album to this particular acoustic stuff just feels right as you'd think it would. It's just a good translation to acoustic from the original, like I was saying. Usual makeshift wrap up embrace to kind of get here. So it's just kind of the concept where this was normally, this would be like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday music, depending upon how much work you had left in the week. It's kind of the concept Tuesday in certain senses, but more of like Wednesday or Thursday, just in the pitch of having like a day or two, or even today being done with work and just being able to have the concept of getting towards heading to like bar hopping, some of those type pitches, to just some step out, some of that type of embrace. It's just a good concept, kind of get that tone. But I just look after within the acoustic type pitch, it just has more, or I think, like I would like to say that this could be like Thursday, Friday type music, but it just kind of still feels within the sense. I feel like the acoustic variation of it kind of shifted it to more of just like more makeshift type fare. It's just within the aspect that it is some excitement, but it's probably just with the aspect actually in mind is saying that there's a little bit of stuff left to get done as far as those pitches can happen. But it is a good concept being able to have that particular aspect of just being able to have like something for the excitement of it. The only problem with this product is just the fact that like when I'm going to talk about Brick by Brick and You're So Gay, some of those type of ones, that the step out on this particular project is a lot more just kind of suave and just more blue blood within a sense. It has that particular tone. And even, I don't know if I said Brick by Brick, but I meant You're So Gay and I Kissed a Girl. Those particular songs just have a little bit more blue blood type aspects about them. That's the step out. I mean, obviously an acoustic song like a dance club scene is a relatively strange type variation, but the three songs that are intended for like more dance club and social type formats, at least that were on that particular album, one of the boys for those pitch gonna happen, which would be I Kissed a Girl, Waking Up in Vegas, and You're So Gay. The thing about these particular songs is the fact that they have the translation of what happens on this time around is just different within the format. And that's like the typical magic of MTV Unplugged as far as those pitches gonna happen with it. Just a good type fair to be able to get towards that. But as a result, like if I mean it just like I think the format of it is if you are expecting something with like that EDM type energy, that MTV Unplugged is not going to be within that relative direction. Just kind of the tone that's just a little bit more of just like, you know, booth type music and just maybe round a bar or something like that, or relative just kind of sit down type music and just more kind of mingle schmooze type music, just in the tone more so than full blown kind of just up and shake your ass like a dance club, something like that. Which just within the concept that the factoid, I mean, Katy Perry made these particular songs hit pretty heavily as far as those pitch can happen. It's just a new variation. We'll go ahead and talk about that. I want to say I talked about at least I'm doing this in two segments here. I want to say I at least talked about Brick by Brick and Waking Up in Vegas, but I Kissed a Girl gives like some Amy Winehouse kind of mudhouse type vibes that I'd say just kind of vibe about that. Just definitely it's like some suave kind of coffee step out. I would feel like hearing just a basic kind of foot tap fun to kind of get. So it's just within the tone. Really worked for something that you would just have like a mocha or a latte to, something like that, a matcha, one of those type of things in particular, just within the tone behind it. Just basic Starbucks type music, probably something you would hear in a Starbucks, especially around those particular times for us. Those pitches can happen. But I look after it, it does start to get a little bit more excitable in the second verse, which is an interesting type pitch. Usually more bookstores have more mellow out type vibes and just kind of sip like a cup of joe and like the winter breeze as far as those pitches can happen. But I look after it, I do like the relative energy behind it, considering that I Kissed a Girl is probably one of the more frenetic kind of songs from Katy Perry around her early days. I'd say it's just some good type fare to kind of get some of that, but it is a nice pitch kind of have. It's the same thing with You're So Gay. This would probably be like the 1-2 punch with I Kissed a Girl, I'd say, at least on this particular acoustic format. It's like a simmering kind of bookstore coffee evening glaze kind of get here, just a lofty take on like a usual makeshift brewer. I'd say about this one, it's just a little bit fleetier now within the pitch behind it. So I just look after it. Like I want to say the original version that was on One of the Boys from 2008 just felt like a makeshift kind of summer relative pep, just kind of in between kind of busybody type vibes. This usual kind of Wednesday and Tuesday type bickering of just not having time, some of those type of pitches, just back and forth, realizing that you may not see this person after Tuesday until like Friday or Saturday. Some of those type of pitches, just like that standard commerce to just saying, hey, I'm kind of not in the mood, you're ticking me off a little bit, but just within the tone as far as those pitches kind of happen. But on this particular product, this feels like something that you would just have like a conversation just near like a Barnes and Noble or one of those type of bookstores, just within the appeal behind it, just basic kind of coffee dredge, especially. And I feel like, you know, like this this product is not, like, I feel like these particular variations of it almost feel like winter and autumn as far as those pitches kind of happen, considering that the tide is kind of shifted from like more summer frolic and pitches like that. It's kind of like a makeshift spin on like the summery type vibes of folks like Mariah Carey and Tupac, which I kind of feel like Katy Perry just kind of did like Target type music in like a summer format, just like in a blue collar sense, but still relatively summer. But some of these don't feel as much like that frolic in mine. A lot of these, like when I say simmering, it's like the concept of a lot of this is just sunset gazing. It's kind of end of the day type fare, and just the concept of makeshift kind of wrapping up, but still somewhat amongst it. But just kind of the pitch of getting some of these, that the scenes and like the settings where you listen to these songs has shifted, which is a good type tone. Just get places like mudhouses and Starbuckses and Targets and Barnes and Noble, some of those type places, and other bookstores, Walden Books, some of those type places, just to be able to say. But some good type fare. And then I don't know if I talked about this song yet, but Hackensack, which is the cover song of like the Fountains of Wayne song on here, is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a simmering kind of late day summer gaze kind of get here. It's some social ruminate, I would definitely feel like, and this is kind of like a vanilla evening makeshift stretcher to kind of have. Yeah, Hackensack is just some usual kind of evening dredge as far as those pitches kind of happen. This reminds me of definitely of like something that like Marcy Playground or Green Day or like Weezer would kind of do within that relative sense. It's kind of a breathy type song just within the pitch behind it. Standard kind of alternative rock dredge just within the pitch behind it. Good type fare for that. Let's look after the tone as far as those pitches will kind of happen with it. Just standard type 1, probably the most vanilla out of most of these on here. It's a little bit more suited for this particular type sound. I don't know the original Hackensack because I don't know that song as well yet, but I would have to say within the tone, it feels like the most natural one to kind of have within that format. I do think Katy Perry's Brick by Brick is pretty excellent type 1 within this pitch as more as well, but that one is just a little bit more particular just within. That one's just a little bit hazier, but it's just a good pitch of just getting like some Green Day Weezer type vibes in their standard take of like that makeshift as far as those pitch can happen. So it does good, has that good appeal about it. So that's the pitch behind it. So in terms of what I'm going to score this EP, me recommending basically 5 out of 7 on here. I'm going to give this EP like an 8 out of 10. Good type pitch, but just some of the complaints about it, just being able to say that the concept that it does have the turn up on here. It's just within the take of just having some different type of appeals, but it just more draws in the larger conduit type point that this grows into. Is just the factoid as far as saying that there just weren't enough Katy Perry songs to really digest, to really get the format as far as being able to have some of these type of moments to really give her the room and like the painting room to be able to have some extra type aspects in terms of some other hits that could have been crafted. But really, I look after, even if this had come out after Teenage Dream, I question what sort of ones would have happened with some of her singles, just thinking as to how E.T. would have translated. I mean, I think it probably would have been clever enough to being able. I think it probably would have been clever enough to kind of see in the format of some additional songs, like another 3 or 4 or 5 type songs to have kind of gotten on here within that relative pitch. But yeah, just the fact that I think Katy Perry is kind of, she works for the most part with doing MTV Unplugged, but it's just the pitch behind it. Seeing her in like acoustic doesn't always have like the most melded type sound. I feel like it's a good choice, but the concept, she needs a lot of songs to be able to distinguish that. And this is kind of the concept, just getting those, because her album, One of the Boys, is just more Wednesday type music, and it's just the format of having some of these makeshift type songs that you're just basically getting like a more sugar coated type version of songs that were already acoustic kind of within the first place. So it's just the format as far as saying that these songs, like some of these on here, just feel like this kind of faceless type ones to kind of have within that tone, because they're the same as they were on the previous album. But I just look after it. Some good stuff on here, but the unfortunate thing is the singles, which had more electricity and just a little bit more liveliness when you get some turn up type moments. For one thing, turn up doesn't always translate that well to acoustic, so it's just kind of the tone that Katy Perry was basically getting screwed from both angles, just because you can't really find like a format to have her translate that well towards it. But it's within it, but she handled it well. It's just kind of the concept. I just think it's not the most affable type thing, because it just would seem like it's not so much she's not a fit, but she just needed more songs to be able to have some of those to kind of do that. But she did do it well with like I Kissed a Girl and You're So Gay, some of those type ones, turning those into coffee shop and bookstore type vibes as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's just within the tone behind it, so it works for that. So the social score as a result, I'll probably give the social score like a 7.75 out of 10. I'd say within the pitch, I mean, it's good enough within the fare behind it, but you just have to look after just being able to say it is kind of a tricky angle, because you don't really know as far as what direction to kind of, I mean, there's like rock just seems more suited. Katy Perry was more pop within a sense, so trying to translate pop to like acoustic rock and pitches like that was just kind of a trickier type vibe, just because the pitch behind it wasn't as much full blown her particular aspect as far as doing it. It's just kind of the tone that some of these with her being makeshift, it just seemed natural that those were going to happen, and that was just already the format, so it's just kind of the tone. But that's the thing about it. Still some good stuff on here. I do like some of these, just some bickering type songs, just be able to get You're So Gay and I Kiss a Girl, some good type tones for that. I do like the translation of Waking Up in Vegas, and Hackensack was a good pick as far as those particular goes for like a cover song. And the Brick by Brick original song's pretty nice as well, so it's a good type pitch. So in terms of the future, like Katy Perry just recently dropped an album in October or September 2024 as far as those pitch going to happen. Good type fair to be able to get that. I just look after like the pitch behind it. I mean, apparently it's been kind of here and there with like the reception, but I still think it'd probably wind up being a pretty dope type project just to see within the appeal behind it. We'll have to see what happens with it. But it seems like Katy Perry's like somewhat phasing out of the spotlight. It's not like, I mean, she is pretty wealthy within the pitch behind it. She's had countless number ones within that relative appeal, but I don't know. I've noticed that it seems like maybe possibly there haven't been as many radio songs from her nowadays and like the chart appeal, but I do think, obviously, for folks who don't know as much from her in the recent times, but only know like songs like Hot and Cold and I Kissed a Girl, she does have way more hits than that. Definitely, I would recommend for folks to get familiar with hits like Birthday and Dark Horse and Roar and some of those type of ones, and E.T. and other hits that she had from Teenage Dream and all those particular ones. But I just would say it's a nice bubbler and a nice appetizer going to get here, as a good type dredge and just overall aspected moments that kind of hit pretty heavily. It's a nice treat and goodie of a project kind of get within that tone. I feel like it's kind of haphazard with the translation towards it in some senses, but it worked for what it did with it, and it definitely handled it well in terms of what it had to work with.